Hello there, everyone. Welcome back to Broly555 TV, and welcome to another game review video for the channel. And as you can see from the title and thumbnail of today's video, today we are doing an honest review of a brand new indie football game that just came out, Access Football 2021. As someone who's played Access Football 2018, 19, and 20, I'm pretty much an established veteran and fan of the Access Football series, especially as they try to dethrone Madden. And as someone familiar with the last couple games leading into this one, I gotta say right off the bat that the Access Football 2021 entry is by far and away the best entry in the series. And by the time you get to the end of the video where you see the score I give this game, some of you watching might be shocked by how high of a score this game's about to get, especially when you look at the gameplay footage. But let me assure you in advance that there's a reason why it's getting that high of a score. Access Football 2021 was made by Access Studios, which is a small, independent gaming studio that has hardly a budget to work with, so the fact that they can put out a game that's any good at all is a miracle. And the fact that they can put out a game that is much better than their previous efforts is also impressive. So, because of the fact that they have a much smaller budget to work with than a studio like EA Sports or 2K Games or 989 Studios or Konami, etc., because of that, I'm not going to hold them to the same high standards I would hold those other studios that have the endless trunks of money. Now, in the future, if Access Studios does get a way bigger budget to work with and they start getting budgets the size of those previously mentioned studios, then I'll hold Access Studios to a higher standard. But for now, I'm factoring in that this is an indie game made by an indie studio with a very minimal budget to work with. And with that being said, let's get into this video review. Let's start by talking about the pros of Access Football 2021, and oh boy, is my list of pros long for this game. So right off the bat, I noticed that Access Football 2021's player and stadium models are much improved from Access Football 20. I also noticed that the player animations were redone, and now they are super smooth. You used to see kind of a glitchy ragdoll effect kind of thing whenever player contact was about to happen, tackles were happening, etc. That's pretty much gone in Access Football 2021. Player animations are completely smooth, and they look fluid, and they look lifelike. In addition to that, I noticed that quarterback throwing animations have been completely redone. They now look more fluid and natural in terms of their throwing motion, whereas the previous games in the series, their quarterback throwing motion looked something akin to a rocket launcher firing a rocket at a target, whereas in this game you can actually see the follow-through on their release points. In addition to this, you also have solid player sound effects in terms of when players are blocking, when tackling's being made, and when other stuff is going on. The sound effects are not bad. They're actually better player sound effects than games like NFL Primetime 2002. A new feature in Access Football 2021 that's not in any of the previous games is that there are now new player celebration cutscenes / animations when plays are over. So you score a touchdown, you hit a field goal, you get a first down, you get a tackle for loss, a quarterback sack, or you force a turnover. Basically any kind of big play, you see player animations after the play is over where they're actually celebrating the animations. And especially when you get into the end zone, you see some really nice touchdown dances by the players in the game. This is something that pretty much all the mainstream football games have had from the beginning of time, but it was missing from the previous Access Football games, but now they're in it, so that's a really big thumbs up to them on that. There's also new stadiums to play in, whereas in Access Football 20 there was about 6 to 8, no, maybe like 8 to 9 different stadiums you could play in. It seems that they practically doubled the amount of stadiums that you can play in Access Football 2021, adding several new stadiums that have not been in any of the previous games. Another thing you'll notice playing the game is that there is very solid color commentary from the two commentators that are talking over and broadcasting your Access Football games. They aren't the best commentaries on the planet compared to some football games that have amazing color commentary, but other indie football games such as Maximum Football 2020 don't even have broadcaster commentary commenting on the game. So the fact that Access Football has color commentary that's any good at all is actually pretty impressive and gives a television feel to the games on screen. Another thing related to the gameplay I noticed is that there were some bugs that plagued the previous game, Access Football 20, that were fixed in this one. For example, there was a sort of a glitch in the system, I guess, where if I took a defensive tackle and I lined him up and attacked in just the right spot, I could bust through the offensive line every time, and I could get a whole bunch of sacks with my defensive lineman, even if he was a mediocre lineman. I'd get like 10 to 15 sacks a game with a C-plus defensive lineman because of this glitch. But in Access Football 2021, that glitch is no longer there. You can't just bust through the line at will with any defensive lineman, no matter how mediocre they are. So they fixed that glitch. Another glitch that was in Access Football 20 was that if the opposing team was down by any amount of scores in the fourth quarter, they would always go for it on fourth down, no matter where they were, what the margin was. You could be up 60-10 or 70-0 with 2 minutes to go in the game, and it could be 4th and 20 from their own 10-yard line, and the CPU would go for it in a situation that no real-life team actually would. They fixed that, and you will not find this little problem in Access Football 2021. And as a result, the games are not stupidly high scoring for an Access veteran like me. Whereas in Access Football 20, because of glitches like this, I was averaging about 70 to 80 points per game, and a lot of those points would come in the fourth quarter. Now I'm only scoring about 40 to 50 points in a game, and that's assuming I play on point and sharp and everything goes good. So fixing a few glitches has made the scores of the game more realistic. Now when you get into other parts of the game, you find that the customization features of the game are top-notch. You can edit and customize every aspect of every team. You can customize the logos, the uniforms, the rosters, the field design, etc. But now, in addition to that, unlike every Access Football game before, you can now create brand new teams from scratch in addition to customizing all the pre-existing teams. And you can customize the new teams in the same way you can customize the pre-existing teams. So the create a team feature that used to be prominent in the sports games of yesteryear but were removed from all modern sports games, well, those are back in Access Football 2021. And hopefully that's a trend that will catch on with other sports games. But in addition to this awesome feature, you also have beautifully designed menus and loading screens, and the score ticker in the games also looks pretty and good. The menu music is absolutely top-notch, which is a staple of the Access Football series. Access Football 18, 19, and 20 also had awesome main menu music in general, and Access Football 2021 is no exception. It once again has awesome menu music. So in addition to the Play Now mode, where you can play an exhibition game, where you can go you can play against a friend, and where you can watch the CPU play each other, and you can do a coaches mode, there's also the franchise mode, which is the staple of Access Football. The deep franchise mode in Access Football is really top-notch and puts Maddens to shame, and it's so deep and so well done in terms of features and functionality that it almost rivals some of the franchise modes of classic games like NFL 2K5 or Madden 07/08. You have deep stat tracking, which now includes career stat tracking for players. You have GM assignments you can do, so basically you can manage the roster, trade players, release players. You can put people on the practice squad, move people from the practice squad to your standard depth chart, stuff like that. You can manage your coaching staff. You can actually hire and fire people for offensive and defensive coordinators and other assistant coaching positions. You have scouts who can scout prospects for the upcoming draft. You can manage and upgrade and repair your facilities, which has benefits to your team's morale and other stats. And there's also financial reports, so you can keep track of what your expenditures are and how much revenue you're bringing into the team through ticket sales, food sales, and all the other stuff that you would be concerned about if you were managing a football franchise. And one new addition they made to the franchise mode that was not in the previous games is that you can now choose which league format you can play in. There are now 2 league formats. You can either choose the NFL format, which is a 32-team league divided into 2 conferences, each conference with multiple divisions, and you have the NFL playoff format. The other league format is the traditional tier system that's been the staple of every other Access Football franchise mode, where you have 36 teams divided up into 3 different tiers of 12 teams in each one, and you play against all the other teams in your tier during the season. And if you get into the playoffs and you win the playoffs, then you can move up a tier. You can move up to the next tier if you're in the bottom or if you're in the second tier. And if you're the worst team in tier 1 or tier 2 and you lose to the best teams in tier 2 and tier 3 in the championship game in the postseason, then you drop down to the tier below. After giving you that laundry list of pros for Access Football 2021, it almost pains me to have to list off cons that I have with the game, but this would not be an honest game review if I didn't talk about some of the cons of Access Football 2021. So here are the ones I wrote down. One thing I noticed is that even though the player animations have been completely redone and they look really smooth and nice and fluid now, the underlying player physics behind the game are exactly the same as last year's game. And the Access Football player physics up until now are not as good as other games like Maximum Football 2020, whose gameplay was purely physics-based and the fluidity of the players looked more natural, and weight and size mattered, and tacklers actually bounced off of you if you were a power running back, whereas Access Football 2021 still doesn't quite have that. But I'm sure the folks at Access Football will be working on that for next year's game. Another thing I noticed, and this is really probably the worst con of the whole thing that's holding the game back, is that the AI of the CPU is too easy. I went ahead and set the AI to maximum for my very first game on Access Football 2021, and I ended up winning the game 52-10. Easy. It was too easy to do what I wanted in terms of running the ball and throwing the ball. And even though they fixed the flaws with the defense that I mentioned earlier in the pros section, it's still not too difficult to contain opposing offenses. Now, if Access Football 2021 can dramatically increase the difficulty of the AI in future games, that will make the game a lot more playable, and everybody will be interested in playing Access Football, especially if they improve all the other stuff that they want to improve. Another con to the game is that the kicking is still too overpowered. Now, I know this is a spin-off of the NFL, and the NFL field goal kickers can nail 55 to 60-yard field goals, especially the very best kickers. The problem I have with the kicking in Access Football is that if your kicker's any good at all, you can basically nail a 55, 60-yard field goal like it's a 30-yard field goal. And if you have a great field goal kicker, you're pretty much going to make any field goal that's within the midfield line. Basically, you have Steph Curry range on your field goals. Now, it's not to say that kickers in Access Football shouldn't be able to make 55 to 60-yard field goals, but they shouldn't be clearing the crossbar by 20 yards. Another con with Access Football 2021 is that it does not have a practice mode. A practice mode is pretty standard fare in pretty much all football games. All the NFL Game Day games had a practice mode. The NCAA Game Breaker games had a practice mode. The NFL Primetime games have a practice mode. Madden has a practice mode. The 2K football games have a practice mode. Even Maximum Football 2020, another indie football game, has a practice mode. And the fact that Access Football doesn't have a practice mode in their game is slightly puzzling. But if they were to add a practice mode in future games, I'm sure that would go over well with fans of the series. Another thing I'd like to note is that there is no instant replays in the game. There's no replays of any big plays or scoring plays that happen in the game, and there's no ability in the pause menu to go to instant replay and check out the play you just did, which is something that's in pretty much every other football game. One last con I'd like to point out is that even though Access Football's color commentators are solid at commentating over Access Football games, I noticed that their commentary in Access Football 2021 is verbatim the exact same commentary that was in Access Football 20, Access Football 19, Access Football 18. So something that the folks in Access Studios ought to consider is bringing in the two guys who do the color commentary for the games and recording some new dialogue so that you can throw some new dialogue of theirs into future games, just so people know that you're actually paying attention to every aspect of the game and so that they can be impressed by your attention to detail. And now that we've gone through the pros and cons of Access Football 2021, it's time to get to my final score for the game. I give the gameplay for Access Football 2021 a 7 out of 10. Now, I give this a 7 out of 10 because the control scheme is not too simple, but it's also not too complex, so casual gamers with a little bit of practice can figure out the controls for the game. It has basically every kind of control you would want in a football game, and all the new features to the game, such as the improved player animations, the improved throwing motions of the quarterback, all of the celebrations after big plays, and fixing the bugs in last year's game. The gameplay is a 7 out of 10. What will make the gameplay score much higher in future installments of the game is if they can make the kicking a little less overpowered, and if they can improve the player physics behind the animations, and if they can jack up the AI difficulty. If the AI difficulty alone was much more difficult, it would be a much more rewarding experience playing Access Football 2021's gameplay. And that gameplay rating would shoot way up if the AI was a lot harder. So really at this point, it's the AI that's holding the gameplay score back. In terms of graphics, I give Access Football 2021 an 8 out of 10. The player and stadium models are noticeably improved. They're actually better than the player and stadium models of independent football counterpart Maximum Football 2020. And I also really like the fact that the player animations are very smooth and fluid looking, and that the quarterback's throwing motions are now a lot smoother and a lot more fluid looking. So the graphics definitely get an 8 out of 10 in this regard. As far as sound, I give the game an 8 out of 10. The color commentary is solid, even though the dialogue hasn't been updated in years, and the menu music is really good. I've never disliked any of the soundtracks in Access Football's games, and this game is no exception. So the sound is an 8 out of 10 because of great menu music and solid broadcaster commentary over the games, as well as decent player audio on the field. Presentation of the game gets an 8 out of 10. The menu design, the loading screen design, the ticker design of the scoreboard in-game, as well as the design of the play selection menu, top-notch, really good. And the overall presentation of the ticker and the commentary of the game makes Access Football 2021 feel like you're watching a professional football game on some TV network. The presentation in this game is very good. And I give the replay value of Access Football 2021 a 9 out of 10. The reason why this is so is that not only can you spend hours customizing and tinkering with the 36 pre-existing teams in the game, but you can also create an infinite amount of new teams in Access Football 2021, and the amount of time you'll be spent customizing those teams as rosters and uniforms and field is also hours of fun. You add that in with a franchise mode that's way deeper than the current Madden games are, and that's pretty much as good as just about any franchise mode in any football game that's ever been, and there is just a ton of reasons to come back and play Access Football 2021. So the replay value is a 9 out of 10. When you add all those numbers up and divide it by 5, the overall score for Access Football 2021 is an 8 out of 10. Which means that Access Football 2021 is technically a great game. So as you guys saw there, I gave Access Football 2021 an 8 out of 10, which means that it's technically a great game according to the standards of the Broly555 TV game reviews. And the thing that really makes this game great is primarily the deep franchise mode and the insane level of customization that's in the game, especially when you factor in the create a team. It doesn't hurt that the game also looks good in terms of player models and stadium models. The improved player animations are a real plus. This game has all the trappings of a great game, and even though the gameplay still hasn't gotten quite up to the visuals and the audio and the awesome replay value of Access Football, the gameplay is just good enough to push Access Football over the edge into the great game category. What will make future installments of Access Football super phenomenal and cause the gaming world to reject Madden and start playing Access Football in general is if they can dramatically improve the AI of the CPU, as well as improve player physics and player animations and make the kicking game a little less overpowered. But the good folks at Access Studios are well aware of the fact that they have a lot of improvement to do in the gameplay area, and even though they made good strides in improving the gameplay in Access Football 2021 from the previous year's games, they're not done yet. You see, I'm part of the Discord group for Access Football, and in the Discord group, Danny Eugen, the president of Access Studios and the man behind Access Football, had this to say to the Access Football community. Everyone, I wanted to take a minute as we wrap up development of Access 2021 to type out my thoughts on what we accomplished this year, the plan for 2022, and to give some insight into the why behind it all. Looking at the features list for Access Football 2021, we have accomplished quite a bit. The Team Suite finally gives users the ability to edit and create unlimited teams, and the other customization options expands the creativity and control over teams. The American Football League setup and Hall of Records for franchise mode adds depth to an already industry-leading experience in franchise mode. As for gameplay, we've drastically improved AI, on-field logic, clock management, and play calling, adding in a complete overtime rule set, and implemented a long-requested feature in field flipping. On top of that, we have added before and after play movement, celebrations, and a host of other active play animations to increase the immersion. But with all that said, where is the game realistically, and where do we go from here? The next 2 months will focus on polishing things up and publishing the games on Steam, Xbox, and PlayStation, and mobile. After that, we will focus on supporting the release by fixing bugs and such, but we are already planning and have been for the 2022 version. Our vision for Access Football has always stood on 3 pillars: simulation gameplay, extensive customization, and a deep franchise mode. With 2021 in the bag, I can confidently say that we have customization and franchise mode down. Sure, there are features that we will add in the future to those areas, but it is becoming increasingly, abundantly, overwhelmingly, megaphone in the ear clear that we need to focus on gameplay. A big reason for this write-up is to let everyone in the community know that we are aware of this. Let me make a bold statement here. The 2022 version will blow people away, and it will look and play light years better than any version before. And then he has a little sentence about giving more information, and he starts answering questions about how exactly they will improve the gameplay. But that's not important for this purpose. The point of reading all this is that Access Football 2021 is by far and away the best entry in the Access Football franchise, and if we're to believe what their president says here, we ain't seen nothing yet. If they make the improvements to the gameplay that I'm hoping for and that they say they're going to make, then Access Football 2022 is going to make Access Football 2021 look like a nothing burger. So, if you're tired of the poor quality of modern Madden games and you don't feel like getting old football games that are actually good to satisfy your football video game needs, and you're looking for an indie football game to fulfill your professional football fix for video games, I would encourage you right now to get Access Football 2021 and feel free to enjoy the insane amount of customization and team creation and all the fun you can have on the franchise mode. Thank you for watching this awesome gaming video on Broly555 TV. If you liked what you saw, I would encourage you to subscribe to the channel, check out our other videos, and be sure to leave your likes and comments down below. If you would like to follow Broly555 TV on other social media sites, I would encourage you to check out our Creation Social page. You can follow us at our Gab account, you can subscribe to our Minds channel, you can follow us on CGN, and you can follow us on Game Jolt. The links to all of those being in the description box below. Thank you for watching and have an excellent day.